The house felt heavier than usual that night, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, and Emily Carter noticed at the moment she turned off the living room light and started toward the stairs, already tired from a long day but unable to shake a strange sense of alertness, the kind that came without reason and refused to leave. The old wooden steps creaked softly under her feet, familiar sounds she had known since childhood, and she was halfway up when she heard it, Daniel's voice. Low, careful, and emotional, coming from the basement, which made her stop so suddenly that her hand tightened around the railing, because Daniel was her younger brother, the one who hated late nights, the one who always fell asleep with the TV on, and the one who had gone to bed hours ago, or at least she thought he had. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, filled with a softness that startled her more than shouting ever could, and what unsettled her most was that it didn't sound like a phone call, since there was no rhythm of conversation, only long pauses followed by words spoken as if they mattered deeply, as if someone unseen was listening closely, and Emily stood there in the dim stairway, heart slowly picking up speed, her mind racing through harmless explanations she didn't believe, because Daniel hadn't been himself for months, he smiled less, avoided questions, and carried a quiet sadness that clung to him even during family dinners, and now, hearing him speak with such raw emotion, she felt like she had stepped into something private and fragile. I don't know if I should say this, Daniel murmured, his voice almost breaking, but I think about you more than I should, and Emily's breath caught because those words weren't casual or careless, they were careful and heavy, the kind people spoke only when alone or when they believed no one else could hear, and she told herself to walk away, to respect his space, but her feet stayed planted as if the truth itself had rooted her there. Daniel shifted, the sound of a chair scraping faintly across the concrete floor, and he continued, some days I pretend you're still here, that nothing changed, and Emily felt a tight pull in her chest, a mix of worry and confusion, because whoever he was talking to wasn't answering out loud, yet Daniel responded like he felt heard, like this conversation mattered more than sleep or safety or being discovered. The basement light flickered through the small window near the ceiling, casting uneven shadows that made the moment feel unreal, and Emily wondered if she should call his name, announce herself, but something stopped her, a sense that whatever was happening down there was delicate, easily broken, and she had already crossed a line just by listening. Daniel exhaled shakily and said, I was scared back then. I didn't know how to be honest, and that single sentence sent a wave of understanding and fear through Emily, because honesty was something Daniel valued more than anything, and if he was admitting fear now, it meant he had been carrying it alone for a very long time. Her thoughts drifted to the past without permission, to summers by the lake, to laughter echoing through open windows, to people who had once been part of their lives and then quietly disappeared, leaving behind unanswered questions and unspoken feelings. And suddenly this wasn't just about curiosity, it was about concern, about realizing that her brother might be stuck in a moment he never escaped. Daniel's voice softened even more as he spoke again, you deserved more than silence, and Emily felt tears press behind her eyes, not because she knew who he was talking to, but because she understood the pain in his words, the regret that weighed them down, and she hated the idea that he had been carrying this alone. While she went about her life believing everything was fine, a floorboard creaked beneath her foot, sharp and loud in the quiet house, and Daniel fell silent instantly, the kind of silence that made Emily's heart pound, and for a second she thought he might come upstairs, that she would be caught listening, forced into a conversation neither of them was ready to have. But after a tense pause, he spoke again, quieter now, almost a whisper, I should go. It's late, and the sound of a chair moving back told her the moment was ending whether she was ready or not. Emily finally moved, stepping carefully up the remaining stairs and into her bedroom, closing the door without a sound, leaning against it as her thoughts rushed in all at once, because she knew something important had just revealed itself, something hidden beneath months of silence and distance, and she also knew this was only the beginning, that whatever secret Daniel was holding had roots in the past and consequences for the future. And as she lay awake in the dark listening to the house settle around her, one truth stayed clear in her mind, her brother was talking to someone who mattered deeply, someone who wasn't supposed to be there anymore, and whatever she had just overheard was going to change everything. The days after that night passed in a blur for Emily Carter, every small sound in the house pulling her attention like magnets, every glance at Daniel making her notice tiny differences she hadn't seen before. He moved with a lightness that seemed out of place, smiled more often at his phone, lingered in rooms longer than necessary, and stayed up late as if drawn by some invisible thread she couldn't name, and the curiosity inside her swelled until it became almost unbearable, because the memory of his voice in the basement haunted her with questions she didn't have answers to. And one evening, when the house was quiet and the sky had darkened into a rich navy, she caught him again, talking softly, almost reverently, words spilling like a confession. "I remember the lake. You laughed when I fell in. I still hear it." And Emily froze because that lake was from their childhood in Michigan, a place she and Daniel had shared memories with only a few people, the ones who mattered, and in that moment, she realized it could only be Sarah Miller, their childhood friend who had moved to Oregon years ago, the girl who had once been so close to Daniel that Emily had sometimes wondered if they understood each other in ways she never could, and now she understood why Daniel seemed so different, so distracted and alive at once, as if something long buried had stirred awake, and Emily felt a strange pang in her chest, a mixture of curiosity, worry, and an emotion she couldn't name, because Daniel's soft confessions weren't just nostalgic, they were tender, full of longing, and filled the air with an invisible ache of things left unsaid, and she watched him pacing slowly, running a hand through his hair as he whispered, "I don't know if she remembers, if she even thinks about it, but I do." And it struck Emily how much he had held inside all these years, the secret weight of emotions unspoken, of love never voiced, and she realized that this was not simply nostalgia. Daniel had never let go, had carried something sacred in his heart, something he wasn't ready to face alone until now, and Emily couldn't help but feel herself drawn into his quiet world, feeling the tension of two hearts separated by time, distance, and silence, and she spent that night on the stairs listening, each word making the house feel smaller, more intimate, more urgent, and she began to see pieces of Daniel she hadn't noticed, the hesitation in his voice, the careful choice of words, the vulnerability he tried to hide from everyone, and Emily's mind wandered to her own feelings, to the way families sometimes carried secrets that changed everything, and she thought about Sarah, imagining her laughter, her warmth, and how that memory could still make Daniel tremble after all these years, and she realized that love, even in absence, left traces that refused to fade, that shaped people quietly but powerfully, and Emily felt an ache of anticipation, a need to see how this would unfold, because the memory-filled whispers weren't just about nostalgia, they were about longing, about hope, about a connection that had survived distance and time, and when Daniel finally fell silent, the stillness in the basement felt heavier than before, as if the walls had absorbed every word, every sigh, every unspoken confession, and Emily, standing in the hallway, felt a mixture of relief and fear, knowing she had glimpsed a side of her brother no one else had, and that whatever was about to happen with Sarah might change their lives forever, and yet, even with the uncertainty and tension, she felt a spark of something warm and fragile, a hope that maybe, finally, the pieces of the past could come together, that the longing and the heartbreak might meet something beautiful, something real, and as she went to bed that night, heart racing and thoughts spinning, she knew one thing with absolute clarity: she had discovered the secret of Daniel's quiet nights, the voice that had haunted her steps, and that secret was powerful, emotional, and alive, and she couldn't wait to see where it led. Emily couldn't stop thinking about Daniel's late-night whispers, the way his voice had carried longing and regret, and after a week of careful observation, she decided she needed answers, a sense of closure or understanding. So one evening, when the house was quiet and Daniel was sitting at the basement desk pretending to read, she quietly descended the stairs, heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity, and asked, "Daniel, who are you talking to?" His eyes widened, a flash of panic crossing his face, and for a moment, Emily thought she had gone too far, that she had shattered something fragile, but then he sighed, leaning back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, and admitted softly, "I'm not really talking to anyone, not in the way you think," and Emily frowned, confused, as he reached to a small recorder sitting beside the lamp, pressing a button, and the soft, familiar voice of Sarah Miller filled the room, warm and bright, as if she had never left, laughing at some joke, recalling memories only they shared, and Emily's chest tightened because suddenly it made sense. Daniel had been speaking to the past, to the recorded moments of joy and intimacy he and Sarah had once shared, trying to reconnect with feelings he had never fully expressed, and he looked at her with eyes full of honesty, the vulnerability he had carried for so long laid bare, and said, "I loved her, Emily. I still do. But I was too afraid to ever tell her, to face the risk of being rejected or losing her completely," and Emily felt a deep ache for him, the kind that comes from watching someone you love hold a lifetime of emotions in silence, and then the sudden buzz of his phone made both of them jump, a single message lighting up the screen, "I'm coming home. I hope it's not too late." Sarah, and for a moment, Daniel froze, staring at the words as if they were both a blessing and a challenge, and Emily saw the mixture of hope, fear, and longing etched on his face, realizing that the secret he had nurtured in solitude was finally moving toward reality, that the quiet evenings filled with whispers were not just echoes of memory, but preparation for a chance that had arrived unexpectedly yet perfectly timed, and she felt a wave of anticipation as Daniel's hands trembled slightly, holding the phone like it contained the future he had imagined for so long, and she knew that what happened next could change everything between them, not just for Daniel, but for everyone involved, because the story of love delayed, of longing preserved, was about to unfold in real life, raw and emotional, the kind of moment that felt fragile yet powerful, the kind that made you hold your breath while watching destiny meet courage, and Emily stepped back quietly, letting him process the message, knowing that the next steps would require honesty, bravery, and a willingness to face emotions that had been buried for years, and as she watched him sit there, caught between past and present, heart and fear, she understood something profound. Daniel's late-night conversations had not been wasted whispers, they had been a bridge, a careful preparation for the moment when past love could find its way back, and now that moment was here, hanging in the air, delicate and electric, ready to transform longing into reality, and Emily felt an unexpected mix of relief and excitement, knowing that the quiet basement, the old recorder, and the whispered confessions were not just about remembering, they were about creating a chance for love to finally speak aloud, and she couldn't wait to see how it would unfold. The day Sarah arrived felt charged with tension and possibility, the air heavy with anticipation as Emily watched from the kitchen doorway, her heart beating faster with each passing moment, knowing that what she was about to witness could change everything for Daniel and for herself, because she had seen the quiet longing in his eyes, the way his voice had trembled in the basement, and now, standing there in the sunlight spilling through the front windows, Sarah looked almost the same as she had in Emily and Daniel's childhood memories, yet older, softer, carrying the weight of years apart, and when Daniel opened the door, neither spoke at first, the silence stretching between them like a delicate thread, both caught in the gravity of emotions that had never truly gone away, and Emily felt a mixture of nervous excitement and protective love as she watched them, knowing that every unspoken word, every memory, every secret longing was finally converging in this single moment. And then Sarah spoke, her voice low, trembling slightly, "I heard your voice, not the recordings. The real you." Emily told me, and Daniel's throat tightened, his hands gripping the doorframe as if to steady himself, because the words confirmed everything he had feared and hoped for at the same time, and he managed to whisper, "I was afraid to say it to your face," and the air between them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move, the next confession, the next step in a dance that had been paused for years, and Sarah's eyes glistened with tears as she smiled gently. "I waited a long time to hear it," and in that smile, Daniel saw forgiveness, understanding, and the warmth of feelings he had never stopped carrying, and slowly, carefully, he reached for her hand, tentative at first, then with growing confidence as she allowed him to take it, their fingers entwining as naturally as if no time had passed at all, and Emily felt a rush of emotion, watching two people rediscover what had been lost, knowing that love could survive absence, survive fear, survive years of unspoken words. And for the first time in months, she felt the tension in the house ease, the weight of secrets lifting as the two stood there, holding hands, smiling, acknowledging everything and nothing all at once, not rushing, not promising forever, simply existing in the fragile, beautiful present, the kind of moment that leaves a lasting imprint on the heart. And later, as Emily stepped onto the porch alone, the evening sky painted in shades of purple and gold, she listened to the soft quiet settling around the house and felt a profound sense of peace, realizing that sometimes love doesn't vanish, it waits patiently for courage to awaken it, for hearts to speak aloud the truths they have carried in silence, and she knew that tonight had changed everything, not with dramatic declarations or grand gestures, but with the gentle, slow unveiling of what had always been there, a love that survived distance and fear, a connection that refused to die. And as the stars appeared one by one overhead, Emily smiled softly, feeling a quiet hope in her chest, understanding that life could be full of second chances, and that sometimes, all it took was listening, noticing, and having the courage to let love finally be heard.